A ruler of 1,000,000 worlds wakes in a realm where gods settle disputes through death. No throne, no army, no empire, only sand, blood, and endless combat. Here, unity is not destiny, it is earned one broken body at a time. But what happens when absolute power meets a universe built on balance through war? The air tasted of copper and ash. Sand stretched endlessly beneath a bruised sky, its violet hue threaded with veins of sickly amber that pulsed like infected wounds across the heavens. No sun hung above this wasteland, yet heat radiated from the ground itself, baking the dunes until they shimmered with distorted light. Towers of bone jutted from distant ridges, their architecture impossible, geometries that bent perception and made the eye water. This was Outworld, realm of blood and hierarchy, where power was measured in screams and sovereignty won through the ritual of 10 deaths. Here, gods walked as warlords, and mortals knelt or bled. He stood alone in the center of a cracked basin, golden armor gleaming against the desolation. The emperor of mankind, master of terror, anathema to the warp, opened his eyes to a reality that was not his own. His psychic presence rippled outward like a shockwave, touching the fabric of this dimension and finding it strange, alien, governed by laws that defied the logic of the materium he had known for 40,000 years. No astronomicon guided him here, no throne of gold bound his form. He was flesh again, corporeal, standing at the height of his ancient prime before betrayal and agony had imprisoned him. His fingers flexed within gauntlets of auramite, each movement precise, perfect, undiminished by the grinding millennia of suffering he had endured. The Emperor turned slowly, scanning the horizon. His mind reached outward, testing the boundaries of this place, seeking patterns, understanding. What he found was chaos of a different breed. Not the tumultuous screaming madness of the warp, not the ravenous sentience of daemons clawing at reality, but something structured, ritualized, bound by ancient compacts and cosmic laws that felt almost mathematical in their precision. This realm operated on principles of combat, on the sanctity of mortal conflict elevated to cosmic imperative. He sensed the architecture of it, the way power flowed through champions, through bloodshed, through the proving grounds of endless war. A sound cut through the silence. Distant at first, then growing, the rhythmic beat of war drums echoing across the dunes. The Emperor remained still, his expression unreadable as figures emerged from the heat shimmer. They moved in formation, disciplined despite their savage appearance. Warriors clad in leather and bone, their skin marked with ritual scarring, their weapons primitive yet maintained with reverence. At their center strode a figure whose presence bent the air around him, a titan of muscle and fury whose eyes burned with predatory intelligence. Shao Kahn, conqueror of worlds, emperor of Outworld, halted 20 paces distant. His warhammer rested against one massive shoulder, its head stained with the oxidized blood of 10,000 victories. He wore a helm crowned with bone spurs, his chest bare save for crossed leather straps that did nothing to diminish his imposing mass. Behind him, his honor guard fanned out, weapons raised but not yet committed. They had learned caution in service to their master. Premature strikes ended in agonizing death. The conqueror studied the golden figure with the practiced eye of one who had measured countless opponents before delivering their final breath. He saw the armor, pristine and unmarked, its craftsmanship beyond anything forged in Outworld's volcanic foundries. He saw the sword sheathed at the stranger's hip, its hilt radiating a faint luminescence that suggested power beyond mere steel. Most importantly, he saw the stillness, the absolute lack of fear, the posture of one who had never known defeat. "You stand in my domain." Shao Kahn's voice boomed across the basin, amplified by both physiology and sorcery. "You wear the bearing of a conqueror, yet I do not know your name. Speak, so that I may inscribe it upon your tomb." The Emperor regarded him with eyes that had witnessed the birth of stars and the death of civilizations. When he spoke, his voice carried layers beneath layers, harmonics that resonated in the bones of those who heard it, psychic weight that pressed against consciousness itself. I am the Emperor of mankind. I have unified 1,000,000 worlds beneath a singular vision. I have broken gods and cast down their temples. I have walked among mortals as savior and destroyer, architect and executioner. Your domain is unknown to me, but your intent is transparent. Shao Kahn's laugh was a thunderclap. He stepped forward, his warriors mirroring the movement, encircling the golden figure with practiced efficiency. Unknown to you? This realm has stood for 10,000 years, sustained by the blood of champions and the screams of the conquered. Earth realm trembles at my name. Edenia lies in ruins beneath my boot. You are either a fool or an elder god testing me in mortal guise. I am neither. The Emperor's hand moved to his sword. The gesture was minimal, but every warrior in the circle tensed. They had learned to read such movements, to recognize the microsecond before violence erupted. Their master had trained them well. Strike first or die. Shao Kahn raised his free hand, forestalling his warriors. His eyes narrowed beneath the rim of his helm, studying the stranger with renewed interest. You claim dominion over 1,000,000 worlds. Show me. Here, in Outworld, power is not decreed, it is proven. Combat is the only truth. Victory the only law. If you are what you claim, demonstrate it in the arena. 10 warriors, 10 victories. Survive, and we shall speak as equals. Fall, and your bones will join the towers that mark my conquests. I do not participate in gladiatorial spectacle, the Emperor replied, his tone unchanging. I end wars. I do not perpetuate them for entertainment. Entertainment? Shao Kahn's voice dropped to a growl. This is Mortal Kombat, the sacred tournament that has governed the fate of realms since before your 1,000,000 worlds drew breath. It is law. It is order imposed upon chaos. Without it, realms would collapse into each other, reality would fracture. The elder gods themselves decreed it. The Emperor absorbed this information, his mind processing implications with machine precision. A cosmos governed by ritualized combat, where sovereignty was determined not through unified vision but through endless conflict. It was barbarity, but barbarity with structure. It reminded him of the warring techno-barbarian tribes of ancient Terra, before he had imposed imperial truth and forged unity through fire and conviction. Then your elder gods have created a prison of violence, the Emperor said, a system that ensures perpetual suffering under the guise of balance. I have seen such false equilibriums before. They serve only those who profit from the bloodshed. Shao Kahn's expression darkened. The insult was clear, deliberate. No one questioned the sacred tournament. No one blasphemed against the eternal laws. His grip tightened on his warhammer, knuckles whitening beneath scarred skin. You will learn respect, the conqueror snarled. The arena or execution, choose. The Emperor drew his sword. The blade emerged from its sheath with a sound like singing crystal, its edge catching the sickly light and transforming it into something pure, radiant, painful to behold. It was the sword of the Emperor, forged in ages past when he still walked openly among his people, when he guided humanity's ascent with direct intervention rather than distant manipulation. Psychic energy coiled along its length, responding to his will, shaped by a consciousness that had mastered the immaterium itself. I choose a third path, the Emperor said. I will demonstrate why your system must end, not through your arena, not by your rules. I will show you what true unity demands. He moved. The psychic blast erupted outward in a sphere of golden fire, a telekinetic shockwave that struck Shao Kahn's warriors like a physical wall. Bodies flew backward, tumbling through the air, their weapons torn from their grips. The conqueror himself staggered, his immense mass and sorcerous fortitude the only things preventing him from joining his soldiers in the sand. He roared, swinging his warhammer in a devastating arc, but the emperor had already closed the distance, moving with speed that defied his size, his sword a blur of radiant steel. The blade met the hammer's haft with a sound like a thunderclap. Shao Kahn felt the impact reverberate through his arms, felt the wood splinter beneath the blow. Impossible. The weapon had shattered mountains, it had crushed the skulls of gods. Now it fractured against a single sword stroke. The emperor twisted his wrist, redirecting force, and the pommel of his blade crashed into the conqueror's helm with surgical precision. Metal bent, bone spurs snapped. Shao Kahn stumbled backward, vision swimming, tasting blood in his mouth. The emperor did not pursue. He stood in the center of the scattered warriors, sword held in a guard position that radiated perfect economy of motion. Every muscle in his body was relaxed yet ready, energy conserved, power held in reserve. He had made his point. Dominance without carnage, superiority without slaughter. "I do not seek to rule through fear," the emperor said, his voice cutting through the groans of wounded warriors. "I offer something your system cannot provide: purpose, unity, an end to pointless suffering in service of cosmic stagnation." Shao Kahn spat blood into the sand. His vision cleared, rage and grudging respect warring in his expression. No one had struck him thus in centuries. No one had moved with such impossible speed. The stranger's power was undeniable, but it was his restraint that truly disturbed the conqueror. He could have killed them all. Instead, he had delivered a lesson. Before Shao Kahn could respond, the air split apart. Lightning tore through reality, white-hot and precise, striking the ground between the emperor and the conqueror. Thunder followed, deafening, shaking the dunes. When the light faded, a figure stood in the scorched crater, vapors of ozone and displaced energy swirling around him. He wore white and blue, traditional robes of an Earthrealm monk combined with armor that crackled with residual electricity. His eyes glowed with pure white light, pupilless, terrible in their intensity. A conical hat shadowed his features, but power radiated from him like heat from a forge. Raiden, god of thunder, protector of Earthrealm, regarded the scene with the timeless patience of an immortal who had witnessed 10,000 tournaments. His presence brought immediate stillness. Even Shao Kahn's warriors ceased their groaning, straightening as much as their injuries allowed. The Thunder God's word was law in matters of mortal combat. His judgment could alter the fate of realms. "Cease this conflict," Raiden's voice resonated with divine authority, each syllable accompanied by the distant rumble of storms. "Shao Kahn, you have challenged an unknown entity outside the bounds of the sacred tournament. This violates the compact. Emperor of mankind, you stand upon ground that is not yours, asserting authority you have not earned through proper channels. Both of you disturb the balance." The Emperor turned to face this new arrival, his psychic senses analyzing, measuring. He perceived the divine nature immediately, recognized the fundamental difference between this being and the false gods of the warp. Raiden was not sustained by belief or emotion. His power was intrinsic, woven into the fabric of this dimension, tied to cosmic laws that predated mortal civilization. A god by architecture rather than ascension. "I recognize no balance built upon eternal warfare," the Emperor replied, meeting Raiden's glowing eyes without hesitation. "I have spent 10 millennia fighting to free humanity from such cycles. Your system perpetuates suffering under the guise of cosmic necessity." "And your system?" Raiden moved closer, lightning crackling along his arms, not threatening but present, a reminder of power held in check. "The psychic resonance you carry speaks of empires built on conquest, of worlds brought to compliance through force. How different is your unity from the dominion Shao Kahn seeks?" The question struck deeper than any weapon. The Emperor felt its weight, felt the truth embedded within it. and did not flinch. I impose order to end conflict, to create a future where humanity need not fight for survival. Your tournament ensures that conflict never ends, that each generation must prove itself through bloodshed. You have institutionalized the very violence I seek to eradicate. You speak of eradication, Raiden countered. Yet your presence here was announced by a psychic shockwave that rippled across 3 realms. You struck down warriors for the crime of following their master's orders. You claim moral superiority while demonstrating the same might makes right philosophy you condemn. Shao Kahn had risen to his full height, watching this exchange with fascination. Rarely did anyone challenge the Thunder God's pronouncements. Rarer still did they do so with such conviction. The Golden Stranger's words were blasphemy, yet they carried undeniable force. For a moment, the Conqueror wondered what would happen if such conviction was turned toward conquest rather than ideology. The Emperor's sword lowered, though he did not sheathe it. I demonstrate power to prevent greater violence. I offer choice backed by consequence. Your tournament offers no choice. Realms are bound to participate or face absorption. Champions are forced to fight or watch their worlds burn. You call this balance. I call it tyranny dressed in ritual. Then you understand nothing of the compact, Raiden said, and for the first time his voice carried something beyond divine certainty. It carried weariness, the exhaustion of eons spent holding back chaos. Before the tournament, realms tore each other apart without restraint. Gods warred openly, destroying civilizations as collateral. The Elder Gods established mortal combat to contain that violence, to channel it through rules, through limits, through champions who fought for something greater than themselves. It is not perfect, but it has prevented apocalypse for 10,000 years. The Emperor absorbed these words, his mind racing through calculations, projections, comparisons. He thought of the Age of Strife, when mankind nearly destroyed itself during Old Night. He thought of the primordial annihilator, the chaos gods who fed on conflict and emotion, growing stronger with every war. Could this tournament be a similar mechanism, a way to contain violence rather than eliminate it? And if so, did that make it justifiable? Show me, the Emperor said finally. Show me, Earthrealm. Show me what your protection has built. Let me see if your system truly preserves or merely delays the inevitable. Raiden studied the golden figure with those glowing white eyes, seeing beyond flesh, perceiving the layers of psychic might, the centuries of burden, the weight of responsibility that pressed upon this being's shoulders. He recognized a fellow guardian, though their methods differed vastly. Perhaps understanding could be built, perhaps conflict could be avoided. Very well, the Thunder God said. But understand this. If you threaten Earthrealm, if you attempt to impose your will upon its people, I will stand against you. My duty is to protect them, even from those who claim benevolent intent. I would expect nothing less. Raiden raised his arms, electricity arcing between his palms, building in intensity until it formed a sphere of crackling energy. The portal tore open, a gateway between realms, its edges burning with divine power. Through it, the Emperor glimpsed a different world. Blue skies, green forests, cities built by human hands, flawed but thriving. Earthrealm. He stepped toward the portal, then paused, turning back to regard Shao Kahn. The Conqueror had retrieved his Warhammer, his warriors forming a loose defensive line behind him. Blood still dripped from beneath his damaged helm, but his posture remained defiant. You could have killed me, Shao Kahn said, and it was not a question. I could have, the Emperor acknowledged. But death solves nothing. Unity requires that former enemies see a path forward together. Remember that when next you consider conquest. Then he stepped through the portal, and Outworld's wastes vanished in a flash of lightning. The transition was instantaneous but jarring. Reality folded, compressed, then expanded outward in different configurations. The Emperor's psychic senses adjusted rapidly, cataloging new patterns, new laws, new constraints. Earthrealm operated on principles closer to his own universe, though subtle differences remained. Physics held more consistently. The warp's influence was absent, replaced by something analogous, a spiritual realm accessible to certain beings but far less corrosive than the Sea of Souls. He materialized in a courtyard of polished stone, surrounded by traditional architecture that spoke of centuries of careful maintenance. Paper lanterns hung from wooden eaves, their soft light pushing back against the evening darkness. The air smelled of incense and rain, clean in a way Outworld's atmosphere had never been. Cherry blossom trees lined the perimeter, their delicate flowers stirring in a gentle breeze. This was the Wuxi Academy, hidden temple of Earthrealm's defenders, sanctuary of martial discipline and spiritual cultivation. Raiden appeared beside him, the portal collapsing to a single point of light before winking out. The Thunder God's presence immediately drew attention. Figures emerged from the shadows, moving with the fluid grace of trained warriors, their forms shifting from relaxed vigilance to ready combat stances in heartbeats. These were the champions of Earthrealm, those who had proven themselves in countless battles, who had faced demons and sorcerers and gods and survived. At their center walked a man whose bearing radiated quiet authority, Liu Kang, chosen of Raiden, champion of Mortal Kombat, warrior monk who had defeated Shang Tsung and Shao Kahn himself in sacred combat. He wore simple red and black, his headband marking him as a monk of the Shaolin tradition, his fists wrapped in cloth that had absorbed the sweat of 10,000 training sessions. Flames flickered along his forearms, not consuming, merely present, an extension of his will rather than a weapon requiring conscious effort. Liu Kang approached without fear, studying the golden figure with dark eyes that missed nothing. He had learned to read opponents instantly, to assess threats and weaknesses in the span between heartbeats. What he saw troubled him. The stranger's posture was too perfect, too controlled. Every muscle in that frame existed in optimal condition. There were no wasted movements, no nervous energy, no micro-expressions that revealed inner state. It was like watching a statue that had learned to breathe. Lord Raiden. Liu Kang bowed respectfully, though his eyes never left the Emperor. You bring an outsider to our sanctuary, one who radiates power I cannot fully measure. Should we be concerned? That depends, Raiden replied, moving to stand beside his champion, on whether understanding can be reached. Liu Kang. This is the Emperor of mankind, ruler of 1,000,000 worlds beyond our realm, seeker of absolute unity, and challenger of our sacred system. The other champions drew closer, forming a loose semicircle. Johnny Cage, movie star turned genuine fighter, his sunglasses reflecting the lantern light, his casual stance belying his readiness. Sonya Blade, Special Forces officer, her tactical vest loaded with equipment, her posture military rigid. Jax, her commanding officer, cybernetic arms gleaming in the dim light, their servo motors humming softly. Kung Lao, Liu Kang's cousin, his razor-edged hat held ready, his stance mirroring his relative's discipline. The Emperor regarded them each in turn, his psychic perception mapping their capabilities, their fears, their hopes. Liu Kang burned with dedication to his cause, his spirit tempered by loss and hardened by responsibility. Sonya carried trauma beneath her professionalism, scars from battles that had cost her friends and nearly her life. Jax radiated protective fury, his augmented arms a constant reminder of sacrifice. Johnny Cage hid uncertainty behind humor, masking his insecurity about whether he truly belonged among these legends. Kung Lao lived in shadow, striving to prove himself equal to his more famous cousin. They were mortal. They were flawed. They were magnificent. You have trained them well, the Emperor said to Raiden. They stand ready to die for their realm. That dedication is rare, precious, worthy of respect. But insufficient, you believe, Liu Kang said, his voice calm but edged with challenge. We heard your words to Lord Raiden. You think our system barbaric. You think we perpetuate suffering. Yet we have protected Earthrealm for generations. We have stood against threats you cannot imagine. I have stood against horrors that would shatter your mind to perceive, the Emperor replied, not boasting, merely stating fact. I have fought daemons that feed on reality itself. I have commanded armies that number in the billions. I have seen civilizations rise and fall like tides, have witnessed the birth of false gods and ended their existences. Your experience is vast, warrior. Mine is incomprehensible. Johnny Cage whistled low. Okay, so we've got a god-complex situation happening. Great, love it. Anyone else getting major megalomaniac vibes? Cage, quiet, Sonya hissed. But the Emperor turned his full attention to the actor, and Johnny felt the weight of that gaze like physical pressure. Those eyes held galaxies. They had witnessed the extinction of species, the collapse of empires, the screaming death of worlds. And yet, behind the power, behind the terrible knowledge, something human remained. Something that still remembered what it meant to feel loss. I am not a god, the Emperor said softly. I am merely a man who has lived long enough to accumulate power beyond mortal comprehension. And in that time, I have learned one truth above all others. Unity is not tyranny, it is survival. Humanity in my realm stands against forces that would devour reality itself. Without unity, without absolute coordination, we would have perished millennia ago. And what of free will? Liu Kang stepped forward, flames intensifying along his arms. What of the right to choose one's own path? You speak of unity as though it justifies any action, any sacrifice. But forced unity is indistinguishable from enslavement. The Emperor met his gaze without flinching. I give humanity the freedom to survive, to reach its full potential, to claim the stars and build a civilization that will outlast the very gods. Your system offers the freedom to fight, to bleed, to die in endless cycles of conflict. Tell me, champion, which freedom is more valuable? The freedom to fight for what we believe in, Liu Kang replied immediately. The freedom to stand against oppression, even when the oppressor wears gold and speaks of salvation. I have faced Shao Kahn's tyranny. I have seen what happens when one being decides their will supersedes all others. You sound like him, Emperor, dressed in different words, but the song remains the same. The comparison struck home. The Emperor felt its weight, felt the accusation settle into his consciousness. How many times had he heard similar words? From Horus, before the betrayal. From Guilliman, questioning his methods. From Magnus, defending his pursuit of knowledge against prohibitions. From countless others who had looked upon his vision and seen not salvation but subjugation. Perhaps, the Emperor said finally, perhaps there is truth in your words, but consider this. If I am Shao Kahn dressed in gold, what makes your Raiden different? He imposes divine will, enforces rules mortals did not choose, acts as arbiter of realm sovereignty. Is that not tyranny? Or is it acceptable because you agree with his goals? Raiden's eyes flickered, a brief disruption in their steady glow. The question was uncomfortably perceptive. The Thunder God had indeed imposed his will countless times, had made decisions that affected millions without their consent, had played the role of benevolent dictator for eons. The difference, he told himself, was that he acted in service of the Elder God's compact, in service of balance. But was that truly different from claiming service to humanity's future? The difference, Raiden said slowly, is that I have relinquished power when given the opportunity. I have allowed mortals to determine their own fate, even when I disagreed with their choices. I am a guardian, not a ruler. Until someone challenges the compact, the Emperor countered. Then you enforce. Then you become ruler again, whether you claim the title or not. The courtyard fell silent. champions exchanged glances, uncertain how to process this philosophical duel. They were warriors, trained to face physical threats, to respond to violence with disciplined counter-violence. This battle of words and principles left them adrift, watching titans of different methodologies clash without ever drawing weapons. Kung Lao stepped forward, his voice cutting through the tension. "Enough debate. Lord Raiden brought you here to demonstrate what our system has built. Let me show you what Earthrealm's warriors can do. Let me demonstrate why we need no empire, no unifying vision beyond the strength of our convictions." The Emperor regarded the younger warrior with interest. Kung Lao radiated eagerness, hunger to prove himself, to step from shadow into light. It was a familiar pattern, one the Emperor had seen in countless young aspirants throughout history. That hunger could be shaped into greatness or twisted into tragedy. The line between remained perilously thin. "You wish to fight me. I wish to show you that we are not weak," Kung Lao replied. "That we do not need your unity to stand against threats. That free warriors fighting for belief are stronger than any army marching under compulsion." "Kung Lao, wait," Liu Kang began, but his cousin was already moving to the center of the courtyard, assuming a ready stance, his razor hat held in both hands. The Emperor considered refusing. He had not come to fight these people. He had come seeking understanding, seeking to learn if this system could be reformed rather than dismantled. But he also recognized the challenge for what it was. A test, a demonstration. Words alone would never convince warriors who lived by the creed of action. He walked forward, sword still held loosely at his side, and took position facing Kung Lao. The courtyard seemed to expand around them, the watching champions fading into background, the lanterns dimming until only the combatants remained in clear focus. The Emperor could have ended this instantly. A single psychic command could have rendered Kung Lao unconscious. A fraction of his power could have immobilized the warrior completely. But that would teach nothing. It would only confirm their fears, demonstrate the very tyranny they accused him of embracing. Instead, he waited, observing, analyzing. Kung Lao moved first, his body exploding into motion with practiced precision. The razor hat left his hands, spinning horizontally, its edge catching moonlight, becoming a disk of silver death. The Emperor sidestepped, minimal movement, conserving energy. The hat curved mid-flight, returning to its master like a loyal hound. Kung Lao caught it seamlessly, already transitioning into his next attack, closing distance with lightning speed. His kick came from an impossible angle, body twisting, leg extending, foot aimed at the Emperor's temple. The Emperor leaned backward, spine bending with inhuman flexibility, the attack missing by millimeters. Kung Lao's follow-up was instant, a barrage of strikes flowing from shoulder, elbow, fist, palm, knife hand, each technique perfect in execution, each blow potentially lethal. The Emperor blocked, parried, redirected, never once striking back, his movements economical to the point of appearing effortless. The watching champions saw the truth. Kung Lao was fighting at his absolute peak, pouring everything into this demonstration, and the golden stranger was toying with him. Not cruelly, not mockingly, but with the patient instruction of a master allowing a student to exhaust their arsenal before revealing the true gap in skill. Kung Lao spun, his hat arcing toward the Emperor's legs, seeking to sever tendons, to ground this opponent and force acknowledgement of mortality. The Emperor jumped, not high, just enough to clear the spinning blade, and as he descended, his free hand moved in a gesture that seemed almost casual. Psychic force rippled outward, invisible but devastating, striking Kung Lao's center mass with the force of a battering ram. The warrior flew backward, crashing into the courtyard's stones, sliding to a halt near Liu Kang's feet. He gasped, lungs struggling to remember how to draw air, ribs screaming protest. His cousin knelt beside him immediately, checking for serious injury, finding only bruises and damaged pride. The Emperor lowered his hand, regarding the fallen warrior with eyes that held no triumph. "You fought well, with conviction, with skill that honors your training. But you asked me to demonstrate the difference between warriors fighting for belief and armies marching under singular purpose. I have shown you. Individual excellence, no matter how refined, cannot stand against coordinated power backed by millennia of strategic evolution." Liu Kang helped Kung Lao to his feet, then turned to face the Emperor, flames now burning bright along his entire body. "Then let me show you what Earthrealm's chosen can do. Let me demonstrate why we have never fallen despite facing gods and emperors and demons, not through unity of purpose, but through strength of spirit." "Liu Kang, no." Raiden stepped forward, lightning crackling warningly. "This escalates beyond demonstration into true combat. I will not permit." "I must know," Liu Kang interrupted, his voice carrying absolute certainty. "I must understand if this being poses a threat to everything we have built. If his philosophy is truly superior or merely might disguised as enlightenment, grant me this, Lord Raiden. Trust my judgment." The Thunder God hesitated, weighing duty against respect for his champion's wisdom. Liu Kang had never been reckless, had never sought combat without cause. If he felt this test necessary, perhaps it was. But the risk remained immense. The Emperor's power was unlike anything they had encountered, vast in scope, alien in application, unknowable in its full extent. "Very well," Raiden said finally. "But understand, Emperor, if you harm Liu Kang beyond what honor demands, I will intervene. And my intervention will not be gentle." "I would harm none of you if given choice," the Emperor replied. "But I will defend myself, and I will demonstrate truth through action, as your champion has requested." Liu Kang moved to the courtyard's center, assuming the dragon stance, feet planted, weight balanced, fists positioned. Fire coiled around him now, not merely decorative but alive, responding to his chi, his life force channeled through years of meditation and combat into tangible elemental fury. He had defeated Shang Tsung with these flames. He had burned away Shao Kahn's sorcery. He had stood against the fallen elder god Shinnok and emerged victorious. The Emperor faced him, sword now held in a true guard position, blade angled across his body, stance shifting from casual observation to focused readiness. His psychic presence intensified, no longer passively analyzing but actively engaged, his consciousness expanding to fill the courtyard, perceiving every variable, calculating outcomes with computational precision enhanced by millennia of combat experience. They stood motionless, separated by 20 paces, neither willing to make the first move carelessly. Then Liu Kang screamed, and the world caught fire. The dragon rose from his body, not physical but visible nonetheless, a construct of pure chi given form through spiritual mastery. It coiled upward, serpentine, massive, its eyes blazing with righteous fury. Liu Kang thrust both fists forward, and the dragon obeyed, launching itself across the courtyard with a roar that shattered stone, flames trailing in its wake like the tail of a comet. The Emperor did not flinch. He raised his free hand, psychic power gathering in his palm, forming a barrier of telekinetic force that glowed with golden light. The dragon struck the barrier and exploded, flames washing over the invisible wall, seeking gaps, seeking weakness, finding none. Heat washed backward, scorching the courtyard stones, forcing the watching champions to retreat, shielding their faces from the intensity. Liu Kang was already moving, using the flames as cover, closing distance with breathtaking speed. His fist emerged from the fire, wreathed in concentrated chi, aimed at the Emperor's solar plexus. The Emperor's sword moved in a perfect arc, deflecting the blow, redirecting force. Liu Kang spun with a deflection, his other hand rising, palm strike targeting the Emperor's jaw. The Emperor swayed, minimal movement again, the strike missing by finger widths. Then he counterattacked. The pommel of his sword crashed into Liu Kang's ribs, not with full force, but enough to demonstrate capability. The champion grunted, pain lancing through his side, already pivoting to minimize damage, legs sweeping low. The Emperor jumped, higher this time, and as he descended, his boot caught Liu Kang's shoulder, driving the warrior to one knee. Liu Kang rolled backward, flames intensifying, frustration fueling his power. He had faced countless opponents, had adapted to every fighting style Earthrealm and beyond could offer, and yet this opponent moved as though choreographing their dance, always one step ahead, always precisely where he needed to be. "You fight with skill that honors your realm," the Emperor said, circling now, maintaining distance. "But you fight alone. One warrior, no matter how powerful, cannot stand against coordinated assault. This is the lesson you must learn." "I am not alone," Liu Kang responded, rising to his feet. "I fight for Earthrealm, for every soul that calls this place home. Their strength flows through me, their hope fuels my fire." "And when they falter, when hope dims, what then?" Liu Kang's answer came in action rather than words. He charged, and this time his technique changed, became less structured, more instinctive. He had recognized the pattern. The Emperor's defenses were perfect because they were calculated, predicted, optimized. Perhaps chaos could penetrate where skill could not. His strikes came in unconventional sequences, abandoning formal technique for unpredictable fury. High, low, feint, commit, reverse, impossible angles, sacrificing defense for aggressive variation. The Emperor adapted, his own style shifting, no longer maintaining perfect form but responding to chaos with controlled improvisation. Their movements blurred, fire and gold, fist and sword, each exchange ringing across the courtyard with the sound of flesh meeting metal, chi meeting psychic force. Liu Kang landed a solid blow to the Emperor's ribs, felt satisfaction as the golden armor dented beneath his knuckles. The Emperor's sword pommel caught Liu Kang's temple, dazing him for a critical heartbeat. They separated, both breathing harder now, both bloodied in small ways. Liu Kang's lip was split, the Emperor's cheek bore a thin cut where flames had bypassed his defenses. The fight had escalated beyond demonstration into genuine combat, pride and philosophy fueling both warriors beyond mere technique. Raiden raised his hand, preparing to intervene, but Johnny Cage caught his arm. "Wait," the actor said quietly. "They're learning from each other. Look." The Thunder God paused, observing more closely. Cage was right. The Emperor's movements had shifted, incorporating elements of Liu Kang's fluid adaptability. Liu Kang's strikes showed new efficiency, unconsciously mimicking the Emperor's conservation of motion. They were teaching each other through violence, the oldest form of communication among warriors. Liu Kang summoned the dragon again, but this time he didn't launch it forward. Instead, he merged with it, allowing the chi construct to wrap around his body like armor, flames coating his skin without burning. His speed doubled, tripled, his strikes now leaving trails of fire in the air. The Emperor responded by channeling more psychic power through his blade, the sword beginning to sing, its edge vibrating at frequencies that could cut through dimensional barriers. They clashed again, and this time the impact was cataclysmic. Fire met psychic force, creating a shockwave that radiated outward, cracking stones, extinguishing lanterns, shaking the very foundations of the temple. Liu Kang felt bones in his hand fracture from the impact. The Emperor felt his psychic reserves drain more rapidly than expected, this mortal's chi proving more resilient than anticipated. Both warriors staggered backward, the dragon armor flickering around Liu Kang, the Emperor's sword dimming slightly. They regarded each other across the scorched courtyard, mutual respect growing despite philosophical opposition. "You are stronger than you appear," the Emperor said, genuine admiration in his voice. "Your spirit burns with intensity I have rarely witnessed. In my Imperium, you would have been elevated to lead armies, to inspire billions, to stand as exemplar of human potential. And in doing so, would you have stripped away what makes me who I am?" Liu Kang replied, lowering his fists slightly. "Would your elevation have required I abandon my beliefs, my traditions, my connection to Earthrealm's spirit? Or would I have become another tool in your grand design, shaped to fit your vision regardless of my own will?" The question hung between them, unanswered, because the Emperor knew its truth. Yes, he would have shaped Liu Kang to fit the Imperium's needs. Yes, he would have elevated the warrior's combat prowess while suppressing anything that contradicted Imperial doctrine. It was necessary, he had always believed, to maintain unity. But standing here, facing this free warrior who fought with conviction unmatched by compulsion, doubt whispered in the Emperor's ancient mind. Before he could respond, the sky tore open. Not with lightning, not with portal energy, but with something far worse. Reality peeled back like skin from rotting fruit, revealing darkness beneath, void that screamed with voices that should not exist. The temperature plummeted, frost forming on the courtyard stones despite Liu Kang's lingering flames. The lanterns that still burned flickered and died, their light devoured by encroaching shadow. From that tear stepped a figure that made the Emperor's blood run cold with recognition, not of the individual, but of the type, the archetype, the eternal antagonist. Quan Chi, sorcerer of the Netherrealm, servant of Shinnok, walked into Earthrealm with the confident stride of one who had manipulated gods and demons alike. His pale skin seemed luminescent against the darkness, his red eyes glowing with malevolent intelligence. Bone protruded from his shoulders and head, incorporated into his physiology through rituals that had killed lesser sorcerers. His hands dripped with green flame, necrotic energy that could dissolve flesh and corrupt souls. Behind him came others, undead warriors, revenant slaves bound to Netherrealm's will, their bodies animated by dark magic, their souls imprisoned within rotting flesh. The Emperor recognized several, saw Liu Kang's expression twist with horror as familiar faces emerged from shadow. These had been Earthrealm's champions once, had died defending their realm, only to be resurrected as mockeries, weapons wielded by their enemies. Raiden, Quan Chi's voice was oil sliding over broken glass. Still playing guardian to these mortals, still pretending their brief lives matter in the cosmic span? I bring news. Shinnok stirs, the fallen elder god awakens, and this time no champion will stand against him, not when we control his former allies. A revenant stepped forward, and Liu Kang's world shattered. The face was his own, but twisted, corrupted, eyes burning with Netherrealm fire. This was a timeline echo, a version of himself from a darker path, where he had died and been enslaved to the very evil he had fought against. The revenant smiled, cruel recognition in its gaze. "Brother," it said in Liu Kang's voice, "still clinging to hope, still believing your righteousness will triumph. I have seen beyond such delusions. In death I found clarity, in undeath I found purpose." The Emperor watched this exchange with growing fury. The warp had its horrors, its daemons that corrupted and enslaved. But this was different. This was theft of death itself, violation of rest, imprisonment of souls in their own decomposing flesh. It was obscenity that transcended mortal comprehension. "You dare!" The Emperor's voice cut across the courtyard like a blade, psychic weight behind each word. "You dare profane death in my presence." Quan Chi turned his attention to the golden stranger, interest flickering in those crimson eyes. "And who are you to challenge the Netherrealm's sovereignty? Another self-proclaimed savior? Another would-be god?" He gestured, and the revenants spread out, surrounding the courtyard's defenders. "Your power is impressive, stranger. Perhaps impressive enough to warrant resurrection once we kill you. Imagine a being of your might serving Shinnok's return. Delicious." The Emperor did not respond with words. His psychic presence erupted outward, a wave of golden fire that washed across the courtyard, striking every revenant simultaneously. The undead warriors staggered, clutching their heads, screaming in voices that held fragments of the people they had been. The Emperor's consciousness invaded their minds, finding the fragments of soul still trapped within, seeing the chains that bound them, understanding the mechanism of their enslavement. Then he broke those chains. Psychic force, like surgical scalpels, cut through Quan Chi's binding rituals, severing connections, freeing imprisoned souls. The revenants collapsed, their bodies crumbling to dust as the animating magic dissipated, their spirits finally released to whatever afterlife this realm offered. Only the revenant Liu Kang remained standing, stronger than the others, more deeply bound, but even he felt the assault, felt chains beginning to crack. Quan Chi's expression shifted from confidence to rage. Impossible. Those bindings were woven over centuries, reinforced by Shinnok himself. "You cannot simply—" "I have broken gods," the Emperor said, advancing now, sword raised. "Your sorcery is nothing. Your netherrealm is nothing. You are nothing." The sorcerer screamed, hurling necrotic fire, bolts of green flame that could dissolve stone, that had melted through enchanted armor and divine protection. The Emperor's telekinetic barrier caught them, held them suspended in midair, then compressed them into a single point before launching them back at their creator. Quan Chi barely managed to deflect his own attack, the flames scorching the ground at his feet. Liu Kang moved, no longer fighting the Emperor but standing beside him, facing the true threat. "Together," he said simply. The Emperor nodded, acknowledging the shift in alliance, the pragmatic recognition that philosophical differences mattered less than immediate survival. "Together," he agreed. They charged as one, fire and gold, mortal and transhuman, separate philosophies unified by common purpose. Quan Chi summoned skeletal warriors from the ground, bone constructs animated by necrotic power, their swords manifesting from shadow itself. The Emperor's telekinesis shattered them wholesale, bones exploding into powder. Liu Kang's flames consumed the remains, ensuring they could not reform. The sorcerer retreated toward the reality tear, seeking escape, but Raiden descended in a pillar of lightning, blocking the path. "You violated Earthrealm's sanctuary," the Thunder God's voice boomed. "You brought Netherrealm's corruption to sacred ground. For this, you will answer." Quan Chi laughed, desperate and manic. "Answer? I serve the fallen Elder God. What power have you against Shinnok's inevitable return?" "More than you imagine," the Emperor said, and thrust his hand forward. Psychic force struck Quan Chi like a physical blow, lifting him from the ground, holding him suspended. The sorcerer struggled, hurling every spell in his arsenal, but none could penetrate the Emperor's will. The golden figure approached slowly, inexorably, each step echoing with terrible purpose. "You enslave souls," the Emperor said quietly. "You violate death for power. You corrupt what should remain sacred. I have seen such evil before, in forms that would drive you to madness. And I have learned that some evils cannot be redeemed, cannot be reasoned with, can only be destroyed." The Emperor's hand closed into a fist, and Quan Chi screamed. His body began to compress, bones breaking, organs rupturing, his necrotic power turning inward, consuming him from within. The sorcerer's last sight was of golden eyes that held no mercy, no hesitation, only the cold certainty of absolute judgment. Then Quan Chi ceased to exist, not dead, not banished, but erased. His very essence scattered across dimensions, too dispersed to ever reform. The reality tear he had created collapsed, sealing itself as the power that maintained it vanished. The courtyard fell silent save for the soft patter of ash settling where the sorcerer had stood. The watching champions stood in shocked stillness. They had seen Quan Chi defeated before, had seen him banished, imprisoned, temporarily destroyed, but never erased. Never unmade with such casual finality. The display of power was beyond anything they had witnessed, beyond anything they could replicate. Liu Kang turned to face the Emperor, his expression unreadable. You killed him, not in combat, not in fair fight. You executed him. I eliminated a threat, the Emperor replied, no apology in his voice. He had violated death itself, had enslaved souls to serve cosmic evil. Such beings cannot be allowed to persist. You call it execution, I call it necessary sanitation. And who granted you that authority? Liu Kang's voice rose, anger and confusion warring in his tone. Who gave you the right to judge, to determine who lives and who is erased from existence entirely? The same authority that grants you the right to defend Earthrealm, the Emperor countered. You make life and death decisions in every battle. You choose who to save and who to sacrifice. The difference is scale, not principle. I simply possess the power to enforce my judgments absolutely. The difference is restraint, Liu Kang shouted, flames erupting along his arms again. The difference is recognizing that power demands limitation, that absolute authority corrupts absolutely. You speak of unity and salvation, but what I see is a being who erases those who oppose him, who determines worth based solely on his own metrics. Enough. Raiden stepped between them, lightning crackling. This debate serves no purpose. Quan Chi is gone, his revenants freed. The immediate threat is ended. What remains is determining what happens next. The Emperor regarded the Thunder God steadily. What happens next is that I investigate this Shinnok, this fallen elder god who commands sorcerers and corrupt souls. If he poses a threat to existence, if his return would bring suffering on a cosmic scale, then he must be prevented from rising. Shinnok is not your concern, Raiden said firmly. He is bound by ancient compact, imprisoned by the elder gods themselves. His containment is not a matter for outsiders, no matter how powerful they claim to be. Then you are fools, the Emperor said bluntly. You place faith in ancient containments, in divine promises, in systems built by beings who no longer actively maintain them. I have seen such faith betrayed 1,000 times. Seals fail. Prisons break. Gods forget or grow complacent. If Shinnok is truly as dangerous as implied, his prison must be verified, reinforced, or his threat eliminated permanently. You presume much. Raiden's voice held warning now. You arrive in our realm, demonstrate your power, erase a sorcerer from existence, and now demand access to one of the Elder God's most closely guarded secrets. Why should we trust you? Why should we believe your intentions are anything other than expanding your own dominion? The Emperor was silent for a long moment, his gaze distant, as though seeing across vast spans of time and space. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of genuine uncertainty, the first crack in his absolute conviction that any had witnessed. You should not trust me, he said quietly. You should question my every action, doubt my every claim, verify my every statement, because I have made mistakes before. I have trusted where I should have verified, have believed in unity where corruption festered, have pursued necessary measures that led to unforeseen catastrophe. I do not ask for blind faith. I offer capability matched with experience, but the choice to accept that offer must remain yours. The admission stunned them into silence. This being who had spoken with such absolute certainty, who had moved with such unwavering purpose, now acknowledged fallibility, now admitted doubt. It was perhaps the most human thing he had done since arriving. Liu Kang's flames dimmed slightly. Why did you really come here, Emperor? What do you truly seek in our realms? The Emperor turned to face the champion fully, and for the first time allowed vulnerability to show in his ancient eyes. "I seek to understand if there is another way. My Imperium was built on necessity, forged through 10,000 years of desperate survival against forces that defy mortal comprehension. I made choices that haunt me still, choices that cost me everything I valued. When I arrived here, I saw a system that perpetuates violence, and I reacted from experience, from pattern recognition, from the absolute certainty born of millennia fighting to preserve humanity." He paused, looking around the courtyard, seeing the damage from their battle, the scorched stones, the fallen cherry blossoms. "But perhaps I am wrong. Perhaps your system, flawed as it is, contains wisdom mine lacks. Perhaps warriors fighting for belief rather than compulsion possess strength I have underestimated. I came seeking to impose my will, to fix what I perceived as broken. Now, I wonder if I am the broken thing, wielding terrible power in service of a vision that has already failed." The confession hung in the air, raw and unexpected. Sonya and Jax exchanged glances, their tactical training warring with instinctive empathy. Johnny Cage removed his sunglasses, studying the golden figure with new perspective. Kung Lao lowered his razor hat, no longer seeing an enemy but a fellow warrior bearing scars that predated mortal civilization. Raiden's expression softened imperceptibly. He had witnessed countless beings claim divinity, demand worship, assert absolute authority, but he had never heard one admit doubt, acknowledge fallibility, question their own foundational purpose. It was either the most masterful manipulation he had encountered, or genuine revelation born of conflict and contrast. "If you truly seek understanding rather than dominion," the Thunder God said carefully, "then I propose a test, not of combat, not of power, but of principle. Help us defend Earthrealm not by imposing your will, not by erasing threats with absolute force, but by working within our system, respecting our methods, accepting our limitations. Show us that your unity can coexist with our freedom. Demonstrate that strength and restraint are not mutually exclusive." The Emperor considered this proposition. Everything in his nature rebelled against accepting artificial constraints, against working within systems he recognized as flawed. Efficiency demanded optimal solutions, and optimal solutions rarely respected traditional boundaries. Yet he had come seeking understanding, and understanding required experiencing perspectives beyond his own, submitting to methodologies that challenged his assumptions. "I accept," he said finally, "but understand, if your system proves insufficient, if your limitations result in catastrophic failure, I will act according to my judgment. I will not watch innocents suffer in service of philosophical consistency." "Fair enough," Raiden replied. "And if your methods prove as tyrannical as Liu Kang fears, if your actions threaten the freedom we defend, we will stand against you, regardless of power disparity." They regarded each other, guardian and emperor, divine protector and transhuman architect, both carrying the weight of impossible responsibility, both scarred by decisions that haunted them across eons. An understanding formed between them, not agreement, not alliance, but mutual recognition of shared burden. "So what happens now?" Johnny Cage asked, breaking the tension with deliberate levity. "Do we all group hug it out, or is there like a cosmic treaty signing ceremony? Because I'll be honest, the dramatic speeches are getting a bit heavy." Despite everything, the Emperor found himself almost smiling. The actor's humor was defensive, certainly, but it also served a necessary function, puncturing pretension, reminding everyone involved that beneath philosophical debate and cosmic stakes, they remained individuals trying to navigate impossible situations. "Now," Liu Kang said, taking charge with quiet authority, "we heal, we rebuild, and we prepare for whatever comes next. Because if Shinnok truly stirs, If Netherrealm moves against us, we will need every advantage, every ally, even uncomfortable ones. He extended his hand toward the Emperor, not in submission, not in full acceptance, but in willingness to begin. The Emperor regarded the offered hand for a moment, seeing in that gesture everything his Imperium had lacked: choice, mutual respect, alliance built on shared purpose rather than enforced compliance. He clasped Liu Kang's forearm, warrior to warrior, and felt something shift in the cosmic fabric around them. Not dramatically, not with thunderous portent, but subtle, like the first crack in ice before spring thaw. Possibilities opened, paths diverged. The future, for the first time in the Emperor's endless memory, felt genuinely uncertain. And uncertainty, he realized, was not always weakness. Sometimes it was the space where growth occurred. The courtyard began to repair itself, not through magic but through simple labor. The champions retrieved tools, cleared debris, tended to wounds. The Emperor watched them work, his psychic senses noting the easy camaraderie, the practiced coordination born of shared trials rather than enforced discipline. They functioned as unit without losing individuality, achieved synchronization without sacrificing autonomy. It reminded him of something from before. From when his sons had been newly created, before titles and legions, when they had been simply brothers learning to fight together, before doctrine codified behavior, before necessity demanded absolute conformity, before the heresy burned away innocence and left only brutal pragmatism. "You are remembering something," Raiden observed quietly, materializing beside him, "something that causes you pain." The Emperor did not deny it. "I once built something similar to what I see here, a family of warriors, each unique, each powerful, bound by shared purpose rather than compulsion. I thought I could preserve that unity while scaling it to galactic civilization. I was wrong. The larger it grew, the more control became necessary, until love was replaced by duty, brotherhood by hierarchy, and purpose by mere survival. Scale corrupts structure," Raiden said thoughtfully. "What works for a temple of monks fails when applied to nations. What succeeds for cities crumbles under planetary burden. Perhaps your Imperium was too vast to sustain the very unity it sought to create." "Perhaps," the Emperor acknowledged. "Or perhaps I simply failed to trust those I elevated, feared their potential more than I honored their loyalty. Control became my answer to every problem, until control itself became the problem." The Thunder God nodded slowly. "And now you stand in a realm that has survived 10,000 years precisely because it resists centralized control, because it values the unpredictable strength of free warriors over the reliable efficiency of disciplined armies. Does that frustrate you, Emperor, or does it offer hope?" Before the Emperor could answer, reality shuddered. Not tearing, not collapsing, but shuddering, as though existence itself had been struck by massive impact. The repaired courtyard cracked again, stones splitting along fresh fault lines. The sky darkened impossibly fast, stars winking out one by one, swallowed by encroaching void. Temperature dropped so rapidly that frost formed mid-air, ice crystals appearing from nothing, settling like snow that burned rather than chilled. Every champion in the courtyard felt it, a pressure building in their chests, behind their eyes, in the marrow of their bones. Raiden's expression shifted from philosophical contemplation to primal alarm, his lightning crackling erratically, barely controlled. The Thunder God knew this sensation, had felt it once before, millennia ago, during the war that had shattered the Elder Gods' unity and cast their mightiest member into imprisonment. "He is coming," Raiden whispered, and his voice carried neither hope nor confidence, only dread. Shinnok, the fallen one, he should not be able to manifest, should not be able to reach through his prison, but I feel him. He is coming. The Emperor's psychic senses extended outward, mapping the disturbance, analyzing its signature. What he discovered chilled even his ancient consciousness. The approaching presence was vast, ancient beyond measurement, fundamentally intertwined with this dimension's structure. It was not invading from outside, not tearing through from another plane. It was emerging from within, as though reality itself was vomiting up something it had imprisoned in its deepest recesses. And it was wounded. Furious, absolutely malevolent. Liu Kang moved to the courtyard center, flames erupting fully around him, his entire body becoming a living torch. The other champions assumed defensive positions, weapons drawn, powers manifested. They had faced Shinnok before, in a previous timeline, in other circumstances. They knew his might, his cruelty, his utter contempt for mortal existence. And they knew that without divine intervention, without elder god assistance, they stood no chance. The Emperor felt their fear, tasted it through his psychic connection, understood its source. They were preparing to die, not in hopes of victory but in defiant refusal to kneel. It was magnificent and tragic in equal measure, mortality at its finest and most futile. "No," he said simply. Every eye turned to him. The Emperor's form began to glow, not with reflected light, but with internal radiance, psychic power building exponentially as he drew from reserves cultivated across millennia. His presence expanded, no longer contained by physical flesh, becoming something more, something that pressed against the laws of this dimension the way Shinnok's emergence strained reality's foundations. "You will not die today," the Emperor continued, his voice resonating with absolute conviction. "I have allowed myself doubt, accepted uncertainty, questioned my methods, but this truth remains unchanging. I protect humanity. In my realm, in this realm, in any realm. And I do not permit gods, fallen or otherwise, to prey upon mortals while I draw breath." Raiden stepped beside him, lightning merging with golden radiance, divine and psychic power creating synergies neither had anticipated. "Then we stand together, Emperor. Not in your service, not under your command, but as allies defending the defenseless. Let Shinnok face what happens when mortal conviction meets immortal power tempered by hard-won wisdom." The sky split open. Not with portal elegance, not with controlled manifestation, but with violent tearing, as though existence itself was being ripped apart. From that wound poured darkness absolute, void that devoured light, substance that unmade matter upon contact. And within that darkness, eyes opened. Thousands upon thousands of eyes, each burning with cold white fire, each perceiving, judging, finding the assembled defenders wanting. Shinnok emerged. His form defied easy description, partially humanoid, but only in the way that mountains are partially stone, in the way that hurricanes are partially wind. He stood taller than any structure in the Wuxi Academy, his body composed of bone and shadow, armor forged from fallen stars and broken promises. His face, if it could be called that, bore resemblance to classical demon imagery filtered through cosmic horror, beautiful and terrible, attractive and repulsive, fascinating and nightmare-inducing. He spoke, and reality bent around each syllable, physical laws rearranging themselves to accommodate his words. So, the warden emerges from his lightning cage to face the prisoner. How delightfully predictable, Raiden. Tell me, do you still believe your rebellion was righteous? Do you still think casting me down served justice rather than jealousy? The fallen elder god's gaze swept across the assembled champions, dismissing them as insects, then settled on the Emperor with sudden, intense focus. Recognition flickered across those inhuman features, not of identity but of category, of type, of threat level. And what is this? A psychic anomaly from beyond our dimensional boundaries? How fascinating. You reek of stolen divinity, mortal who grasped at godhood and found only burden. You remind me of what I once was, before I transcended such limiting perspectives. Tell me, do you serve these mortals, or do they simply represent convenient tools for your ambitions? The Emperor met Shinnok's gaze without flinching, without retreating, his presence growing to match the fallen gods, his consciousness expanding until it encompassed the entire courtyard, then the temple, then the surrounding mountains. He perceived the full scope of Shinnok's power, mapped its parameters, identified its weaknesses, calculated victory conditions. "I serve humanity's survival," the Emperor replied, his voice cutting across dimensions, reaching into Shinnok's core despite the fallen god's defenses. "And you represent an existential threat to that survival. Therefore, you must be contained or destroyed, preferably the latter, as containers have disappointing tendency to fail." Shinnok laughed, and the sound was universes screaming, "Contain me! Destroy me! I am the fallen elder god, architect of Netherrealm, shaper of death itself. I was ancient when your species learned to make fire. What possible threat could you pose to my return?" This, the Emperor struck. Not with fists or blade, not with conventional weaponry or physical force, but with psychic assault of such magnitude that it created visible distortions in space-time. His consciousness, refined through 10,000 years of mental discipline, accelerated through evolutionary enhancements that pushed cognition beyond biological limits, compressed into a spear of pure will and thrust directly into Shinnok's mind. The fallen elder god staggered. Impossible, yet happening. His essence, so vast, so powerful, so utterly convinced of its invulnerability, encountered something it could not simply overwhelm. The Emperor's psychic presence invaded his thoughts, his memories, his fundamental identity, and did not dissolve upon contact but instead began mapping, categorizing, seeking control points. Shinnok's retaliation was instant and devastating. Necrotic energy erupted from every pore, waves of death magic that could dissolve matter at atomic level, that could age stone to dust and steel to rust in heartbeats. The Emperor's telekinetic barriers held, barely, golden light flickering under the assault, cracks appearing in the invisible walls. Liu Kang and the champions moved as one, no longer spectators but active participants. Fire and lightning, bullets and rockets, martial techniques perfected over lifetimes, all directed at Shinnok's towering form. Individually, their attacks were meaningless, gnat stings against titan hide. But coordinated, empowered by desperation and conviction, they created openings, distracted, forced the fallen god to divide his attention. Raiden ascended, lightning forming a pillar that connected earth to void, his divine nature manifesting fully for the first time since the Emperor's arrival. The Thunder God's power was not merely electrical, not simply energetic. It was fundamental, tied to Earthrealm itself, drawing from the realm's essence, from the accumulated life force of billions of souls who had lived and died defending their home. For Earthrealm, Raiden's voice boomed, and the lightning struck. Shinnok screamed, not in pain but in rage, his concentration broken, his defenses momentarily compromised. The Emperor seized that instant, his psychic spear driving deeper, finding the core of Shinnok's consciousness, the nexus where fallen divinity connected to cosmic architecture. And there, he discovered the truth. Shinnok was not merely evil. He was not simply a god gone wrong, an elder deity corrupted by ambition or madness. He was necessary, or had been once, serving a function in the cosmic machine that governed these realms. He had been the administrator of death, the shepherd of souls, the one who ensured transition from life to afterlife occurred smoothly, without metaphysical traffic jams or spiritual log jams. But he had grown to love his position too much, to cherish the power it granted, to covet the worship it generated. He had begun experimenting, keeping souls that should have moved on, building armies from the dead, constructing Netherrealm as personal kingdom rather than cosmic processing center. The other elder gods had confronted him, and war had erupted, a conflict that had nearly destroyed reality itself before Shinnok was bound and imprisoned. Yet his function remained necessary. Without an administrator of death, souls wandered, lost, trapped between life and non-existence. The system had compensated, other mechanisms arising to fill the gap, but imperfectly, inefficiently. Shinnok's imprisonment had created problems that persisted millennia later, ripples of dysfunction that manifested as undead eruptions, spiritual possessions, ghostly hauntings. The Emperor withdrew from Shinnok's mind, his psychic presence retracting but not retreating, maintaining pressure while processing implications. The champions continued their assault, Liu Kang's flames scorching shadow flesh, Jax's cybernetic fists impacting with pile-driver force, Sonya's energy rings disrupting necrotic flows. Raiden's lightning persisted, pillar of divine wrath holding Shinnok partially paralyzed. But they could not win. Not permanently. Even working together, even coordinated perfectly, they could only delay, distract, damage. Shinnok would recover, would adapt, would overwhelm them through sheer power disparity. The Emperor understood this with crystalline clarity. They needed something more, something that addressed the fundamental problem rather than its manifestation. Raiden, the Emperor's voice cut through chaos. I have seen his memories. He serves a function that cannot simply be erased. Destroying him will create worse problems. Then what do you propose? The Thunder God's response came strained, his power draining rapidly, maintaining lightning assault at such intensity beyond even divine endurance limits. The Emperor made his decision, not calculated, not optimized, but intuitive, trusting instinct cultivated across millennia of impossible choices. I will bind him, not imprison, not seal, but restructure. I will force his nature back to original purpose, strip away corruption, restore function without granting freedom. That is impossible. Shinnok's voice was fury incarnate. I am Elder God, you are mortal playing at transcendence. You cannot reshape fundamental existence. Watch me. The Emperor released his full psychic might, no longer holding reserves, no longer maintaining barriers, no longer conserving strength for prolonged conflict. Everything, all at once, directed not at destruction but transformation. His consciousness expanded beyond individual identity, becoming field, becoming force, becoming fundamental principle. He had done this before, in his own realm, when facing the Chaos Gods, when plunging into the webway, when sitting the golden throne and holding back the tide of demons. He had learned to operate at conceptual level, to manipulate not merely physical reality but the underlying patterns that gave reality structure. It was the ultimate expression of psychic mastery, the reason he was called the Anathema, the being who could say no to gods and make it stick. He wrapped his consciousness around Shinnok's essence, around the fallen god's fundamental nature, and began to rewrite. Not forcibly, not through crude overwriting, but surgically, precisely, finding the points where corruption had taken root and excising them, isolating them, transforming them. He could feel Shinnok's resistance, feel the Elder God's power thrashing against constraint, but he did not relent. The champions watched in awe as Shinnok's form began to change. The massive, terrifying presence began to compress, shrinking not in weakness but in refinement, losing excess malevolence, shedding accumulated hatred. The void darkness that had surrounded him lightened, becoming shadow rather than absence, neutral rather than malevolent. But the strain was killing the Emperor. His golden armor cracked, splits appearing along joints, blood seeping through gaps. His psychic presence flickered, maintaining cohesion through will alone, holding pattern even as foundation crumbled. He had attempted this magnitude of transformation before, on Terra, when sealing the webway breach, and it had nearly destroyed him then. Now, outside his home dimension, without the support of humanity's collective psychic potential, without the Astronomican's stabilizing influence, He was rapidly approaching failure threshold. Liu Kang saw it first, saw the Emperor's knees beginning to buckle, saw golden light dimming, saw transformation beginning to unravel. The champion made no conscious decision, acted purely on warrior instinct, on the certainty that they stood together now, that philosophical differences mattered less than immediate necessity. He placed both hands on the Emperor's armored back and poured his chi forward, his life force, his spiritual essence cultivated through decades of meditation and combat. It was everything Liu Kang had, the sum total of his power, offered freely, trusting that it would be used wisely. The effect was immediate and profound. The Emperor's consciousness, flagging under impossible strain, suddenly had new foundation, new fuel, energy that resonated differently than psychic power, but proved compatible, translatable, usable. He channeled Liu Kang's chi through his own systems, converting it, adapting it, using it to stabilize the transformation. Kung Lao saw his cousin collapse and stepped forward without hesitation, adding his own power. Then Johnny Cage, his energy derived from ancient bloodline awakening, proven when he had struck Shinnok in previous timeline. Sonya and Jax, their technology interfacing with flesh, organic and mechanical working as one, every champion, every defender, pouring everything they had into sustaining the Emperor's work. Raiden's lightning intensified, no longer attacking but supporting, divine power weaving with psychic might and mortal chi, creating synthesis that transcended individual components. The Thunder God felt tears of light streaming down his face, witnessing something he had never imagined possible. Not dominion, not submission, but true cooperation, multiple beings of vastly different natures working in perfect synchronization toward shared purpose. Shinnok's screams faded. His form solidified into something smaller, more contained. No longer cosmic horror, but merely vast presence. Powerful but bounded. Dangerous but predictable. His consciousness, which had spanned dimensions, compressed into singular focus. The corruption that had twisted him into fallen status burned away in golden white fire, leaving only the original function, the cosmic role he had been created to fulfill. The Elder God stood chained by invisible bonds, psychic and divine and mortal energy woven into restraints that could not be broken from within, could only be maintained from without. He retained power, retained awareness, retained identity. But he could only use that power in accordance with original purpose. He was Death's administrator once more, nothing less, nothing more. The Emperor collapsed. Liu Kang caught him before he hit the ground, the champion's own strength nearly exhausted but sufficient for this final service. The golden armor was shattered in places, revealing flesh beneath, pale skin crisscrossed with scars that told stories of 10,000 years of warfare. The Emperor's eyes flickered, consciousness wavering, psychic reserves depleted beyond anything he had experienced since the heresy's darkest days. Did it work? He managed the question through lips cracked and bleeding. Raiden descended, landing lightly beside them, his own form diminished, lightning reduced to sparks crackling along his skin. The Thunder God studied Shinnok's bound form, reading the cosmic signatures, verifying the transformation's stability. "It worked," Raiden confirmed, wonder in his voice. "You have done what the Elder Gods themselves could not. You have restored him to proper function while preventing further corruption. The compact is restored, Death's administration resumes, and reality breathes easier for it." Shinnok's eyes, now merely white rather than burning, focused on the Emperor with expression that might have been respect or might have been hatred, perhaps both. "You have bound me, mortal who claims divinity. You have caged the uncageable. But know this. What you have done to me, what you possess the power to do, marks you as greater threat than I ever represented. The Elder Gods will take notice, and they do not appreciate usurpers. Let them notice," the Emperor said, his voice barely whisper. Let them come. I have faced gods before. I will face them again if necessary, but not today. Today I rest. Today I allow others to stand watch. Today I trust." And he closed his eyes. The assembled defenders stood in silence, processing what they had witnessed, what they had participated in, what they had achieved together. Liu Kang gently lowered the emperor to the ground, ensuring he rested comfortably despite the shattered courtyard stones. The champion's own exhaustion was absolute, every muscle screaming protest, his chi reserves completely depleted. But he smiled. Despite everything, despite philosophical opposition and violence and cosmic stakes, he smiled, because they had won. Not through individual dominance, not through one power overwhelming all others, but through cooperation, through trust built in crucible of necessity, through the very unity the emperor preached applied through the freedom Liu Kang defended. "We should move him inside," Sonya said, her tactical mind already assessing next steps. "Get medical attention, establish perimeter, secure Shinnok's location. We won the battle, but war's not over. Netherrealm still exists. Quan Chi might have contingencies, and we just pissed off a god. Several gods, probably," Johnny Cage added, collapsing to a sitting position. "Because when you bind a fallen elder god using power of friendship energy, that tends to make the cosmic establishment nervous." Jax nodded, his cybernetic arms smoking slightly from overload during the battle. "Cage has a point. We need to prepare for retaliation. Need to figure out what we're going to do with sleeping God Emperor here. And need to establish whether this alliance is temporary or if we just accidentally started something bigger." Raiden raised his hand, and servants appeared from within the temple, monks who had wisely remained in shelter during cosmic battle. They brought stretchers, medical supplies, ceremonial tools for cleansing corrupted ground. The Thunder God directed them with practiced efficiency, his divine nature reasserting control despite exhaustion. "The Emperor will recover," Raiden said with certainty born of divine perception. "His psychic reserves regenerate differently than mortal stamina or even divine essence. Given time, given rest, he will return to full strength. What he does then remains to be seen. But for now, he is our guest, our ally, and we will honor that status." They moved the Emperor inside, placing him in the temple's most secure chamber, a room warded with prayers and protected by ancient magics that predated Earthrealm's recorded history. Liu Kang remained nearby, refusing to leave despite his own need for rest, still wary despite alliance, still uncertain what future held. Kung Lao brought tea, simple gesture of hospitality, of normalcy reasserted in face of cosmic disruption. "Do you trust him?" the younger warrior asked quietly. Liu Kang considered the question carefully before answering. "I trust that he believes he serves humanity's best interests. I trust that he will sacrifice himself before allowing innocence to suffer. I trust his power and his conviction." He paused, sipping the tea, feeling its warmth restore a small portion of strength. "But I do not trust his methods. And I do not trust what he might become if unopposed, if granted free rein, if allowed to pursue unity without restraint. He is both savior and threat, and we must remain vigilant against both aspects." Hours passed. The Emperor remained unconscious, his psychic presence reduced to barely perceptible whisper, his physical form so still that Liu Kang periodically checked for breathing, reassuring himself that this transhuman being still lived. Outside, the temple underwent repairs, stone reset, wards reinforced, defenses strengthened against potential Netherrealm retaliation. Raiden stood upon the temple's highest tower, looking out across Earthrealm, his divine senses extended to maximum range, monitoring for threats, watching for disturbances. He felt the Elder Gods' attention now, their cosmic awareness finally focusing on what had occurred, their collective consciousness beginning to analyze implications of Shinnok's binding. They were not pleased, but neither were they intervening. Yet, the Thunder God understood their hesitation. What the Emperor had done violated no explicit law, threatened no cosmic compact, but it demonstrated capability that made them nervous. If he could reshape a fallen Elder God, what else could he reshape? What other fundamental structures might he decide required correction? The question haunted Raiden as well, because he had no answer, could provide no reassurance. When dawn broke, pale light filtering through cherry blossoms, the Emperor opened his eyes. Liu Kang was there immediately, hand on sword hilt, ready but not aggressive. The Emperor regarded him through vision still slightly unfocused, psychic senses gradually coming back online, consciousness reassembling itself after complete exhaustion. "How long?" he asked. 18 hours, Liu Kang replied. "You slept while we rebuilt, planned, and argued about what to do with you. And what did you decide?" Liu Kang smiled without humor. "That we have no idea. You are too powerful to imprison, too dangerous to ignore, too valuable to alienate. So we decided to ask you, what do you intend now, Emperor? Do you return to your realm, satisfied with demonstration? Do you remain here, seeking further understanding? Do you attempt to extend your Imperium into our dimensions?" The Emperor sat up slowly, his armor reforming around damaged sections, psychic energy knitting cracks, restoring function. He felt his strength returning, but knew it would be days, perhaps weeks, before he reached full capacity again. The transformation had cost more than he had anticipated, had pushed him closer to true death than he had ventured in millennia. "I intend," he said carefully, "to remain long enough to ensure Shinnok's binding holds, that no complications arise from what we have done. After that, I will return to my Imperium, if such return is possible. I came seeking to impose my will, to fix what I perceived as broken. Instead, I discovered that wisdom takes many forms, that unity can be achieved through cooperation rather than domination." He paused, looking directly into Liu Kang's eyes. "You were right, champion. I do sound like Shao Kahn, dressed in different words. I have spent so long fighting to preserve humanity that I forgot what makes humanity worth preserving. Freedom, choice, the right to struggle, to fail, to learn, to grow without predetermined path dictated from above. My Imperium needs these truths, and I needed to be reminded of them." Liu Kang felt tension he had not realized he was carrying begin to release. This was not submission, not surrender, but acknowledgement, understanding, growth. Perhaps the Emperor could be trusted. Perhaps this alliance could extend beyond immediate crisis. Perhaps there was hope for something new, something that combined strength with freedom, power with restraint. "Then stay," Liu Kang said. "Stay and learn. Train with us. Share your knowledge while accepting ours. Let us see if unity and freedom can coexist, if strength and restraint can be compatible. Let us demonstrate that different methodologies can work together without one dominating the other." The Emperor considered this, his ancient mind calculating probabilities, projecting outcomes, weighing risks against potential benefits. Every logical analysis suggested accepting the offer, remaining, learning, adapting. But something deeper, something that predated logic and calculation, something human that still persisted despite millennia of enhancement and modification, urged caution. He had made alliances before. He had trusted before. And trust had led to the heresy, to betrayal, to 10,000 years of agony upon the Golden Throne. Could he risk that again? Could he open himself to vulnerability a second time? Or would paranoia, born of trauma, prevent him from grasping the very growth he claimed to seek? Outside, a bird sang. Simple sound, ordinary moment, life continuing despite cosmic disruption. The Emperor focused on that sound, used it as anchor, as reminder that not everything needed to operate at cosmic scale, that sometimes the smallest moments held the greatest wisdom. "I will stay," he said finally, "for a time, to learn, to teach, to see if your way and mine can find synthesis. But understand, if my Imperium calls, if humanity requires my return, I will go. My duty remains unchanged, even if my understanding of how to fulfill it evolves." "Fair enough." Liu Kang extended his hand again,